I learned early that the world does not reach for quiet girls. It simply steps around them, the way people sidestep a chair that doesn't quite belong in the room, but is too polite to move. My name is Ivel, and I was never impressive. Not loud enough to be remembered, not bright enough to be celebrated, not bold enough to be chosen. Teachers paused over my name during roll call like it was a foreign object on their tongue, something that required effort they didn't quite want to give. By the second month, some stopped saying it altogether and just nodded in my direction. Classmates talked over me as if my voice lived in a different layer of air, one that didn't travel far enough to matter. I learned the rules without being taught. Don't take up space. Don't take too long to answer. Don't look disappointed when your hand goes up and no one calls on you. I became useful instead. Reliable. Quiet. The kind of girl adults praised with gentle smiles and phrases that sounded kind but felt like cages. She's no trouble. She's so well behaved. She's always so helpful. Those words followed me like a shadow that grew longer every year, stretching behind me while the actual shape of me faded. I carried books for people who walked ahead of me. I waited my turn in every line, even when I'd been there first. I stayed late to clean up because no one noticed when I left. I was always the last picked, but no one said it out loud. They just stopped calling names before they reached mine, and let silence do the work. I did things right, I did things carefully, and I did them without being asked. But the praise went somewhere else, to louder hands and brighter smiles. I told myself it was safer this way, that invisible meant unharmed, that shrinking was the same as surviving. But sometimes, when the room grew too quiet and I could hear my own breathing, something inside me tightened, a thin, aching want to be seen without having to beg for it. And then the thought settled in, slow and heavy. If no one sees me, it must be because there is nothing worth seeing. I started waking up before anyone could have expectations of me, because it felt safer to fail in the dark. The house was quiet enough to hear my own breathing, the kind of quiet that makes every thought louder. Ivel before sunrise felt different, like a version of me that didn't have to perform softness or obedience, only endurance. I told myself this was discipline, but most mornings it felt more like punishment. I practiced alone because I was ashamed of how slow I was. My hands shook when I tried new things, not from fear of getting hurt, but from the certainty that I would get it wrong. I dropped things. I lost count. I messed up in ways that felt so basic I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. There was no one to clap, no one to watch, and somehow that made it worse. Failure has teeth when it happens in silence. I hated the girl doing the work. I hated how awkward she looked, trying to become someone else. I hated how badly she wanted more while pretending she didn't. Every stretch forward felt like betrayal of the version of me that knew how to stay small without pain. Growth felt dramatic, embarrassing, unnecessary. It felt fake, like I was putting on clothes that didn't belong to me yet. Some mornings I didn't get up at all. I stared at the ceiling and made quiet bargains with myself. Just skip today. You deserve rest. You've been through enough. Comfort wrapped around those thoughts like something warm, something that smelled like safety. I let it win more often than I want to admit. I learned how to make quitting sound reasonable. I learned how to call fear practicality. There were days I came close to stopping entirely, Days when I folded the notebook, pushed it to the back of a drawer, and told myself that not everyone needs to grow. That some people are meant to stay soft, to stay quiet, to stay exactly where they were first placed. But the truth was uglier than fear. I wasn't getting stronger. I was just getting more tired of myself. The breaking point didn't arrive with noise. It arrived with a list taped to a wall. A simple sheet of paper, names in a column, lines through the ones already chosen. Yvelle sat near the bottom, untouched, as the room slowly emptied and people folded themselves into pairs and groups, laughing and brushing past me like I was part of the furniture. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that I didn't even want to be chosen, but the lie tasted old in my mouth. My hands stayed at my sides because lifting them felt pointless. I walked home in a fog so thick it felt physical. The streetlights blurred, and the air felt too heavy in my chest. Everyone else seemed to be moving somewhere, becoming something, stretching outward, while I felt like I was shrinking backward, folding into myself like paper worn thin from too much handling. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and stood there, unmoving, as people walked around me. No one noticed. No one ever did. It hit me then, brutally and clearly, that I had spent years protecting the smallest version of myself. I had called it humility. I had called it peace. I had called it safety. But it was just fear dressed in soft words. Fear felt safer than effort because effort meant exposure. Silence felt safer than speaking because speaking meant being seen. Being unseen felt safer than being judged because judgment meant I would finally have to decide if I was worth defending. I locked myself in my room that night and cried without drama, without sound. The kind of tears that soak quietly into fabric and disappear before morning. My hands shook as if my body was rejecting the version of me it had been carrying. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and felt every weakness like a bruise I couldn't touch. There was no voice telling me I could do this. No applause waiting at the edge of the dark. Just me. And something inside me grew tired. Not of effort, not of pain, not of fear. Tired of cruelty. Not from the world, but from myself. I did not feel strong. I did not feel brave. I felt exhausted in a way that burned deeper than failure. And in that burned-out quiet, I made a choice that felt small and radical. I still felt weak, but I stopped feeling worthless. I walked into the room without preparing an escape route. My heartbeat was loud enough that I felt it in my throat, in my fingertips, in the small space behind my eyes where panic used to live. The air felt heavier than usual, thick with old habits that tried to tell me where to stand, how to fold my shoulders, how to make myself smaller so the world could breathe easier. I let those instincts rise. I let them shake. And I did not obey them. When I spoke, my voice trembled. I did not wait for it to steady. I did not apologize for how it sounded. The words came out uneven, fragile, real. I felt every syllable scrape past years of silence. No one interrupted me. No one laughed. A few faces shifted, surprised. I realized, with a strange kind of quiet shock, that I had never actually given people the chance to respond to my real voice before. I stopped shrinking. Not all at once, not dramatically. Just a small internal refusal, like straightening a spine I had bent for too many years. I lifted my chin without thinking. I held eye contact without flinching. I felt my breath move through my body without trying to hide the sound of it. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cinematic. It was slow and deliberate, like stepping over a line that only I could see. There was no applause. No one rushed forward to validate me, and for the first time, I felt the strange, steady comfort of not needing them to. I left places that had only known the quiet version of me. I stopped explaining myself to people who had never tried to listen. I stopped apologizing for occupying space that I had always been allowed to stand in. My hands stopped shaking as much. My breath deepened. My thoughts stopped tripping over each other. I understood something then, not as a victory, not as a triumph, but as a truth that settled into me like bone. I do not need permission to exist loudly. When I finally walked out of the room, I felt calm. Not the fragile calm that depends on approval, a stronger kind. The kind that comes from choosing yourself in a world that never expected you to. Stillness followed me home, and for the first time, I was not afraid of it. Silence did not make me weak. It made me precise. I see that now. I see how being overlooked sharpened my awareness, how being unheard taught me to listen with a depth that can feel the weight of what isn't said. When no one expects noise from you, you learn how to move through the world without wasting energy, how to watch patterns form, how to feel changes in a room before anyone speaks. I wasn't loud because I couldn't be. I was quiet because I was learning. Strength was never something I inherited. It wasn't handed to me by kindness or chance or talent. It was shaped into me slowly, the way water carves stone without asking for permission. Pain did not destroy me. It honed edges I didn't know I had. Every time I was ignored, something inside me learned patience. Every time I was overlooked, something inside me learned endurance. I was not soft because I was fragile. I was quiet because I was becoming. Being unseen taught me how to stand alone without falling apart. It taught me how to survive rooms that didn't include me, how to breathe through disappointment, how to build a life inside my own mind that no one could take from me. I learned to carry loneliness without letting it rot me. I learned to hold longing without letting it break me. I learned to live with smallness until it no longer fit. Growth did not arrive as thunder. It moved through me slowly, like roots breaking through hard soil while no one was watching. There were no witnesses to the hours I spent fighting the old version of myself. No one saw the trembling hands, the exhausted breaths, the quiet decisions that changed everything. And then, one day, without warning, the ground cracked open. Not because I had become loud, but because I had become solid. There is no anger left in me, no hunger for applause, no bitterness toward the world for not noticing sooner. I understand now that obscurity was not a curse. It was a forge. I wasn't born strong. I was carved, and I learned to honor every strike of the blade.